Hello everyone, my name is Miana Guo. Welcome to Global AirLearning. We are here to share and learn interesting stuff and make friends with other kids. There will be a ICEA reading summer camp. It will be 2 weeks in July. We will be reading the book Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. It will improve our reading comprehension and our reading comprehension levels. Please join us. We hope to see you there. If you want to be the speaker or participate in any teamwork of this program, please register as a member on our website. The link on the website is on the slide. You can also scan the QR code on the slide to go to the registration. Today's topic is A Tale of Explorers. We are super adventurous and excited about having Felix to present that to us.
Now, I chose this topic because I think explorers have changed our world very much and we should really appreciate them. So our first explorer is Ferdinand Magellan, and he lived in the 1600s, 1700s. He lived around that time. Now, back then, the age of exploration was coming. There's Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, many people, they're traveling the world and, seeing many places and exploring. And by that time, people have already known the world was round and many people exploring, these the New World, which is like North America and South America. But there's another place that many people are traveling to. And it's a place called the Spice Islands. Now it's somewhere near Indonesia. Now, why? So back then, the Spice Islands contained many spices. And spices were considered valuable. They were considered treasure back then. And they were so valuable that you can trade them for gold. So like if you had 1 pound of spices, you can trade them for 1 pound of gold. Pretty neat. Yeah, but people living in Europe and it's not exactly easy to go to the Spice Islands. And they only grow in the Spice Islands. Now, the known path there was, you start in Europe and then you would go underneath the Cape of Good Hope, around the Indian Ocean to the Spice Islands. Everyone knew that, the way. However, the country Portugal controlled this path. Portugal was like the main controller. So if you had another country, like say England or something, they would want to go here. It'd be very challenging because Portugal would be they're stopping. They would stop England. They're like, no, you can't come here. So basically, Portugal was rich because they controlled all the spices. And whoever controlled spices was guaranteed rich. Now, we had Ferdinand Magellan. He is Portuguese, and he knows the roads. However, bad times has happened, and he was forced to leave because he got into an argument with the Portuguese king. Now, what did he do? He decided to go to Spain. Now, if you know on the map, Spain is right next to Portugal. Well, it turned out they are rivals, like they are enemies, basically. Enemies. Now, this Ferdinand Magellan, he had this brave idea. He's like, okay, so usually we go down here. What if we go the other way around? What if somehow we would go in the middle of South America, or also known as the New World, and then we would reach the Spice Islands, right? At this point, no one knew there was a thing called the Pacific Ocean. The thing Pacific Ocean was unknown to them. And Spain agreed. So Spain gave him 5 ships and 270 men, and they set off. So they set off and they stayed near the coast of South America. Here they traded with Native Americans for simple objects like fish hooks with fish and fresh food. Now the Native Americans, they have never seen these stuff they've never seen these fish hooks and playing cards or any other simple objects. They never seen these, and they traded them for fresh food. Traded the Europeans for fresh food. However, soon people were getting anxious. Riots started happening. People were all like, oh, you're leading us to our doom. Go back home. Go back home. Go. We don't want you. We shouldn't stop going. Now, what did Ferdinand Magellan do? He acted ruthlessly and ended 2 people's lives and abandoned 2 other people. Now, he did this because he needed to show that he was in control. He needed to show that he was a boss. He's like, okay, you don't want to listen to me? That's going to happen to you. Because he's very determined. He wants to go to Spice Islands. He continues sailing. One ship crashes, but the people were rescued. Another ship fled for home. Not actually flew home, but sailed home. Now, but Ferdinand Magellan did discover something super important. It's called the Strait of Magellan. And straits are tiny passageways that are made by the earth. There's also canals that are made by humans. There's the Panama Canal and stuff. But he found the strait. So he found the strait. But by this time he only had 3 ships left. And they discovered something else peculiar. he discovered the Pacific Ocean. And he was the one, okay, he was also the one who actually named this ocean. So that's a fun fact. This Pacific Ocean we see here is named by Ferdinand Magellan. So this dude, he named the Pacific Ocean and he named the strait. This guy got a lot of things named after him, or he named. However, as we all know, the Pacific Ocean is very long and treacherous. It's the biggest ocean in the world. Soon, food ran out, and they were forced to eat this furry creatures called rats. And they had to drink putrid water, this green, soapy-like water. They had to drink this. Does it look appetizing? I don't think you would like to drink this, do you? But they couldn't drink salt water. They had to drink this water, and they had to eat rats with the long tails. And they were all so fast. So yeah, it's hard times. Many people died because, the food was not sanitary. Yeah, but, hard times. Finally, they reached the Mariana Islands, which if you look on the bottom map is, here. And they were so relieved. However, bad things happened. A native stole one of the boats. So not the ship, but, in the ship, there was a boat in the middle. They stole the boat and fighting started breaking out. Soon, the Ferdinand Magellan had to leave without getting fresh food. Big disappointment. However, soon after, they reached the Philippines. There they ate on bananas and, they had wine. They got all sorts of food. But they didn't want to go to the Philippines. They want to go to Spice Islands or Indonesia. They kept on going. And they reached a small, island called Cebu. In Cebu, found a smaller tribe thingy called Mactan. By the way, this was Native Americans. And, back then, these guys, the Europeans, they believed in one religion, Christianity. They believed in it. And they were like, okay, our goal is to make everyone in the whole universe believe in this religion. I don't care if they're any religion. I want to believe in this religion. And there would be total wars just for the Europeans to make everyone the same religion as them. That was what they believed in. Now, the Mactan guys, they were like, okay, we will be Christian. We will believe in your religion. But to do one thing for us. And then the one thing is to defeat their enemy, the Mactan's enemy, it's a funny name, called the Tulapu. He had to defeat this tribe. Now, Ferdinand Magellan had these cool weapons like guns and, armor. So he's like, oh, sure, But there's one thing he missed. At this point, Ferdinand Magellan had 180 people, 200 people? But how much did the Native Americans have? Thousands. So no matter how advanced your weapons are, 200 versus 2,000, you think you can win? Literally one person versus 10 people. You think you can win? I mean, it's very hard. Okay, now the Ferdinand Magellan, he managed to burn the village down, the tribe's village. But those guys, they came in with their spears, and then Ferdinand Magellan had to run away. However, while going back to the boats, Ferdinand Magellan got hit with the poisonous arrow, and he died. Okay, yeah, so you were lied to. Ferdinand Magellan did not actually cross the world or something. But even though he did not cross the world, later on, he was the one who planned the journey, and his successor or his second in command finished the journey for him. And now the second in command was Juan Sebastian Elcano. Now this guy, he took over the ship after Ferdinand Magellan died, and Magellan is still credited because he was the one who planned the ship, came up with the idea, and got the men together. Now, after the defeat, the rest of the men got ambushed by the Mactan people. Their friends got ambushed, and 50 of them died. Okay, they had to flee. They burned down one ship because each ship cost 30 people to man them or drive them, man them, and they had to burn down one ship because they didn't have enough people to man them. So they currently have two ships, the Trinidad and the Victoria, both not big, both small ships. Continued sailing. They crossed the Sulu Sea and met the beautiful place of Brunei. Then using some local guides, finally 2 years later, crossed the Celebes Sea and reached the Maluku Islands, or also known as the Spice Islands. And here they traded everything they got. They traded everything they had for all the spices their boats could carry. The ships could carry. Unfortunately, one of the ships, the Trinidad, sprang a leak and had to stay back for repairs. Later, the ship tried returning by the Pacific Ocean, but many of the men there died because of sickness, and they had to return back. Later, they were captured by the Portuguese. None of them made it out. The last ship, the Victoria, sailed for home, but still battling headwinds, crossed the deadly Indian Ocean, which was not exactly friendly. Many people died before they got to fresh provisions at the Cape of Good Hope. Finally, almost 3 years later, on September 8, 1522, out of the 270 men, only 18 made it home on their smallest ship, the Victoria. Now, this is just not like some sort of random story of this explorer. Ferdinand Magellan, he changed many. So back then, they knew that the world was round, but no one had no one had ever been around the world and any proof. Finally, because of this journey or expedition, they finally knew how big the world actually was. Like many people thought the world was much smaller than it actually was. And yeah, they also, Ferdinand Magellan also discovered the Pacific Ocean, which no one knew at that time, but now they know there's a huge body of land between the New World and the Asia. Yeah, so that's my first explorer. My second guy is Matthew Henson. Yeah. So Matthew Henson was a American explorer, and he was most famous for reaching the North Pole, being the first to reach the North Pole. And he's also not white, which posed many challenges in his life because he's not white. Now, when Matthew Henson was little, he found work as a cabin boy, which is like a kid escorting the captain. He worked on a ship called Katie Hines, and this is very crucial in his life because using the Katie Hines, he got to see many of the world. He got to see Africa, Europe, and he also know how to like man a ship or drive a ship. He knew how to do all this stuff, which are like impressive for a kid of his age. Yeah, his dad and mom both like died, I think, when he was very little, or his mom died and then his dad like left for work. Now, in 1887, he met the most important man of his life, Robert Perry. These guys become really good friends. Now, in 1891, after meeting Robert Perry, oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to tell you, Robert Perry was a U.S. Navy officer, and the reason they became friends was because Robert Perry, he was accomplished, and he was also impressed by Matthew Henson. Like, he knew how to drive this ship. He'd been to Africa, he's been to Asia, he's been to Europe, he's been to so many places. He has so many achievements. He was impressed. He's like, oh wow, it's pretty good. Yeah, they go to Greenland together, and he learned this Eskimo. These guys, these are Native Americans, and he learned their culture, language, and most importantly, their survival skills. Because these Native Americans, they've been in this like cold weather because they lived in Greenland, and they lived in. Annabelle, do you have a question or comment?
Isn't Greenland in the Arctic Circle?
Yeah, so they're living like near the North Pole, which is what they're doing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, they live in the very cold weather, so they know how to survive in like these cold weathers, and so they learned a lot from these guys. But they also found 3 big meteorites, which are like big rocks from space, and he returned to Greenland to pick up these. Now, what did he do with them? He sold them. These are like you could sell them for a lot of money, and he used his money to.
Meteorites are like priceless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're like very.
They met them from Mars, which was really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And he sold them for money, and he used the money to fund for his expeditions. Because expeditions are not exactly cheap. They cost a lot of money to like get the boats, get the people, get the food, get the like clothing. In the next couple of years, Matthew Henson and Robert Perry will make multiple expeditions to reach the North Pole. In 1901, he and Robert Perry did his first expedition to the North Pole. And it was a disaster. People starved and died. And, everyone, they didn't get far. They didn't even get far. They were forced to retreat. Their sled dogs are dying. And, yeah, it was bad. I think they had to eat their sled dogs or something. Very, very bad. Or it was not, maybe it's not in 1901. It's one of the missions. They had to eat sled dogs. In 1905, they made more progress because they were backed up by Theodore Roosevelt, the president. And they even got a cool vessel or like cool new technology that can break through ice. So they got ice in their way. Just use this thing and break through the ice. And it was called the SS Roosevelt, named after Theodore Roosevelt. And then in 1906, they attempted one more time, and they were so close. Look at that star right there. They were literally just 175 miles to the North Pole. They didn't get it. Look, they came from here, and then 1902, and they were getting closer and closer. Soon they're about to achieve it. But in 1908, Matthew Henson and his team was like, okay, one last time. And he did it. On April 6, 1909, which is also Yo-Yo, who's our vocabulary reader's birthday, they finally made it to the North Pole. There was 6 people in the mission. Yeah, this only says 5. There's 6 people in the mission and like 20 sled dogs. And they started the mission with 40 people and, 60 sled dogs? Although some of them like left. They didn't die. Some of them left. But yeah. Okay, however, you might think like, oh, it's the end of the story. Yay, you got a happy life at the end. Everything was good. However, Robert Perry got many of the awards and privileges and fame, but Matthew got none of it. Can you guys guess why? Miana?
Because earlier you said that Matthew Henson was an African American since he was dark skinned, and that Robert Perry, he's and white. So back then they thought that Black people didn't have the privileges of, like, didn't get any awards or anything.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you were pretty close. Yeah, basically. But many people were like, oh, yeah, that's Robert Perry, the man who went to North Pole. Let's go. Oh, that's Matthew Anderson, the slave for Robert Perry. Many people looked at him like the slave. Oh, he's not any good guy, just a slave. And he wrote a book about his adventures. Never explored the North Pole. Yeah, and also many in truth, Matthew Anderson and Robert Perry were actually equal partners. Like maybe Matthew Anderson was the upper one, because in the last few miles of the trip, like the last 100 miles, Robert Perry actually got frostbites, and it was Matthew Anderson who pulled him along with the sled dogs. So yeah, but many people he's so underrated. They're like, oh, he's the slave that helped him. And finally, 1937, when Matthew Anderson was 7 years old, by the way, he worked the rest of his life as a clerk at a store. He received the acknowledgement he deserved. He and his other teammates got the Congressional Medal, and he worked with Bradley Robinson on the book called Dark Companion. Because he was a dark companion. No one really looked at him like, he's dark. Not actually dark, but Matthew Henderson died on March 9th, 1955, and he was buried right with his friend Robert Perry. Yeah, so that's my presentation. I hope you enjoyed. And now I'm gonna hand it over to our host, Miana.
Thank you, Felix, for your awesome and adventurous presentation. Now I'm going to hand it to Yo-Yo, our vocabulary and 2 questions reader, and we'll start vocabulary.
Privileges, a special right, advantage, or immunity to one person or a group of people. Putrid, decaying or rotting. Meteorite, a meteor that has broken this Earth's atmosphere. Extra fact, 90% of the meteorite is rock. Spices, a pleasant smelling substance used to flavor food. Example, cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, pepper. Credentials, a qualification, achievement, or an aspect of a person's background. Riots, a violent public disturbance of public peace by 3 or more people acting with a common intent. Desert, to abandon. Expedition, a journey or a voyage completed by a group of people. Vessel, a ship or large boat. 2 questions. What do you think? Question number 1. Where do you think is somewhere unknown and can be explored? Question number 2. How do you think explorers have changed the world?
Next week's Global AirLearning, I will be presenting buckets, dippers, and lids. And I hope to see you next week.